Hello, my friends. Today, let's start right away with the Dobropillia direction. Bad news came in from there. Despite all the claims that the Dobropillia sector was practically cut off and the three pockets were supposedly created for the Russians, the official reports from the General Staff of Ukraine state that Russian forces have started breaking through toward the village of Hruske. Now, how can this be happening if they are supposedly encircled? I think you already know the answer. The Russians are also storming Ivanivka, Shakhove, and Volodymyrivka. On top of that, they've begun advancing toward the outskirts of the city of Biletske. So the situation here is catastrophic, and unfortunately, just like before, attempts to improve it haven't worked. If we look at the geolocation maps, there is confirmation that Russian troops have captured the village of Dorozhnye. Ukrainian forces tried to break through with armored vehicles to liberate the village, but so far the results remain unclear. It looks like they didn't succeed. The vehicles were taken out by drones. Sadly, this video evidence basically confirms what's happening on the ground. The situation there continues to worsen. Meanwhile, in the Zoloty Kolodys area, Ukrainian forces once again struck Russian positions. Our fighters released footage showing their attacks against Russian troops who had already dug in, and this means the Russians are pushing forward again. That's a very bad sign. If they really were surrounded, there is no way they would still have the strength to advance. Friends, what do you think? Why do you believe the Russians are once again conducting offensive actions in this sector of the front? Now let's move on to the Pokrovsk direction. Here, Russian forces are once again breaking through near the city of Rodynske, storming Krasnyi Lyman, Novoekonomichne, and pushing into the area of Myroliubivka. They are also attacking Lysivka, advancing toward Novopavlivka, and reaching the outskirts of Pokrovsk. They are storming Molodetske, and the assaults near Udachne, Kotlane, and Zvirove haven't stopped either. The situation is difficult, but for now they haven't been able to move further forward, and during the past 24 hours there have been no changes in the front line. In the Novopavlivka direction, the Russians are pushing across the fields toward Filia, storming Dachne, Zelený High, and Iskra, and advancing from Voskresenka toward Alexandrograd. However, for now, Ukraine's forces are managing to hold the defense here, and there have been no changes to the front line. In the direction of the settlement of Pokrovsk, Russian troops are breaking through near Sosnivka and storming Novogorivka, but over the past 24 hours there have been no new advances. So far, the Russians are simply pulling in fresh reserves. In the Huliaipole direction, the situation is extremely difficult as Russian forces are storming Poltavka and already trying to dig in on the outskirts of the village. For now, Ukraine's defenders are managing to take them out, but the assaults haven't stopped. In the Zaporizhzhia direction, the Russians are pushing toward Novodanylivka and the area around the village of Plavni. The activity here is relatively low, just a few assaults over the past day, but without any success. Still, residents of the Zaporizhzhia region are being urged to evacuate. In the Kherson direction, the Russians continue the assaults on the islands and shell the city of Kherson, but they are still unable to advance any further. Ukraine's armed forces are destroying all of their groups. Now moving to the Kostiantynivka direction. Here, Russian troops are storming Lysivka, pushing toward the village of Klebanbyk in the Rusin Yar area and carrying out shelling. However, no changes have been recorded on the front line in the past 24 hours. In the Kramatorsk direction, Russian forces are assaulting Orikhovo-Vasylivka, but so far they have achieved no success and the front line remains stable. However, in the Siversk direction, a major collapse of the front has taken place. The Russians have seized almost half of Yampil, advancing about 2 kilometers. Near Dronivka, they pushed forward 2.5 kilometers, and toward Siversk itself, they advanced another 3 kilometers, 600 meters, a very serious development. They are now practically at the outskirts of the city, which could lead to severe consequences. In addition, the Russians advanced 5 kilometers 800 meters near Vyimka and 1 kilometer 200 meters near the village of Pereizne, completely capturing it. And the situation is catastrophic, and so far it hasn't been possible to stop the Russian advance. In the Lyman direction, major changes have also taken place. The Russians have completely captured Shendryholove and advanced 3 kilometers 200 meters, which is very significant. Assaults are also ongoing against Kharkivka, the village of Novy Mir, and Russian forces are pushing toward Olhivka. Further south, they managed to advance toward Drobysheve with progress of 3 kilometers 100 meters. Near Yampilivka, the advance reached 3 kilometers 200 meters, and near Zarichne, about 2 kilometers 600 meters. As a result, practically half of Zarichne is already under Russian control, while the rest is effectively in the gray zone, with fighting still ongoing. In connection with these gradual advances, Putin decided to respond to Trump's statement about Russia being a paper tiger.
Everywhere, Russian forces are firmly, and I want to stress this, holding the strategic initiative. But if we are fighting the entire NATO bloc and still advancing, moving forward, feeling confident, then if we're supposedly a paper tiger, what does that make NATO itself? What does it represent?
Friends, share your thoughts about this in the comments. In the Borova direction, no new assaults have been recorded. However, yesterday it was confirmed that the Russians advanced slightly toward Borivska Andriivka and improved their positions there. In the Kupiansk direction, unfortunately, Russian forces also managed to expand the territory they control within the city. Reports indicate advances from two different sides, with offensive actions now moving closer to the central part of the city. As a result, the situation here is also worsening gradually. In the Velykyi Burluk and Dvorishne direction, the Russians are assaulting Bolohivka, pushing toward Dvorichanske and the area of Novovasylivka. However, there have been no new changes in the past 24 hours, and Ukrainian forces are still holding the defense here. In the Kharkiv direction, the Russians haven't carried out new assaults, and the situation remains stable. Meanwhile, in Vovchansk, attacks continue, but the armed forces of Ukraine successfully holding the defense, and no changes have been recorded. In the Sumy direction, the Russians are pushing near Oleksiyivka and Yablonivka, but they've had no success and the front line remains unchanged. Meanwhile, in Russia, strikes continue. Late last night, reports came in of new attacks on a chemical plant in Perm Krai. During the night, unmanned aerial vehicles also attacked Sochi, but details are not yet available. So Russia is being weakened almost daily. And President Zelensky said funding for Ukraine needs to be increased so we can strike more.
We need a bit more funding for drones to match Russia. Today we discussed that while Russia launches, for example, 500 to 600 drones a day, we're using only 100 to 150. We have enough capabilities now. The only question is financing. I discussed this with partners, and by increasing funding, we can match long-range drone capability. As for long-range targets, up to now we have only used our own weapons, as you know. After my meeting with Trump, maybe we'll get something more. I don't know yet. We'll see.
And Putin continues to claim that they currently have no intention of attacking anyone. In general, he also claimed he never intended to attack Ukraine.
The elites of United Europe keep spreading hysteria. Apparently, war with the Russians is just around the corner. They repeat this nonsense, this mantra, over and over. Honestly, I watch sometimes what they say, and I think they can't really believe this. They can't believe that Russia is going to attack NATO, but believing it is impossible. And yet they try to convince their own people. Who are these people? Either they are very incompetent, if they truly believe it, because believing this nonsense is impossible, or they are dishonest, because they don't believe it themselves but try to convince their citizens. What other options are there? Honestly, it makes you want to say calm down, sleep peacefully.
As a result, Putin said he will no longer send drones to Denmark.
Vladimir Vladimirovich, why are you sending so many drones to Denmark?
I won't anymore. Not to France, not to Denmark, not to Copenhagen. Where else do they reach? Lisbon. Where are they flying?
Also, Putin claimed that Europe itself is to blame for the continuation of the war.
So far, unfortunately, it has not been possible to stop the hostilities, but the responsibility for this lies not with the majority, but with the minority, primarily Europe, which constantly escalates the conflict. In my opinion, no other purpose is visible there at this time.
But in Europe, it has already become clear that Russia is testing them and that they need to prepare for the worst.
Russia poses a threat not only to Ukraine, but to all of Europe. Recently, we have seen an increase in violations and aerial activity from Russia, planes, drones, migrants, etc. Russia is testing us more than ever. We need to be united and coordinated. That's exactly what our meeting was about. We need to combine our efforts to build a stronger, more secure Europe. And of course, we need to increase support for Ukraine in the form of weapons, in the form of additional sanctions against Russia. I would like all Europeans to look at it this way. Every euro, dollar, or Danish krona we send to Ukraine is a direct investment in Europe's security.
Overall, friends, share your thoughts in the comments. And that's all from me, so please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all the latest news. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye bye.